Welcome to Rocket Talks Entertainment. Join Rocket Miner editor Caleb Michael Smith and social media manager Hannah Ramiro.
Good day to you. We're talking about the movie, the musical, all sorts of different versions of Little Women by Louisa May Alcott.
Yes. So obviously this is very well-known story, been adapted so many times, I think.
But for those people who aren't aware to it, because I'll admit I'd read the Great Illustrated Classic, but otherwise I hadn't engaged with it for a very long time.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people have heard of Little Women. They're vaguely familiar with it. Some people, it's just that. It's like, yeah, I've heard of that, but what is it?
My sister read it.
Yeah, exactly. For some people like me, it's something you grow up with. It's a huge part of my life because especially my mom and my older sister have just loved Little Women forever. So I've just kind of grown up knowing the story and seeing different versions of it. So I'm very familiar with it. But there are a lot out there, but it's becoming more pertinent to us right now because not only was the newest film version released this past Christmas.
We got like 6 Oscar nominations.
Yeah, it did incredibly well. But also, locally here, Western Wyoming Community College is putting on a production of the Broadway musical that's going to start at the end of this month. So.
Which month are we in again? It's been a long...
It's been a long beginning of the year. This is February.
February 2020.
Yes. So the production at the college is going to be February 28th and 29th, and then the next weekend as well, March 5th, like over the course of those 3 days. So there will be 2 weekends, several opportunities to go and see the musical, which I highly recommend you do because it's very worth it.
So for people just wanting to know what they're getting into, what's the general story?
Right. So story centers on these 4 sisters and just kind of tells about their lives and their relationships and the things that change. It mostly focuses on Jo, who is very spunky and she likes to write. She wants to be a published author. And it's set during America in the Civil War.
Yeah, I was going to stress that's...
Which is, good to know.
that is both good to know because of both the timing of the story set, so that tells you the ages and costumes and whatnot,
right.
In addition to attitudes.
Yes, definitely.
And what was an acceptable role for women.
Which became very important, especially in the new film version, really touched on that. But honestly, the book itself is just kind of seen as one of those, like, next to Jane Austen, that was really ahead of its time in its attitudes and the way it handles relationships and women's roles and everything. But yeah, centers on these 4 sisters and specifically on Jo and just kind of their different personalities and relationships and their lives. It just feels very, very realistic and down to earth. It was based largely on the author Louisa May Alcott's own life and family. So it feels very personal and very realistic. But they're just great characters, and it's a fun story that, if you don't know it already, will keep you guessing and change some things that you didn't expect. And for those who do love it, I don't know, every version of it is just special. Like, just brings something new.
What were your so just going through some of the different versions, what are your favorite things that this version does especially well, like the movie may do that the book may not, or the musical may do?
Right. I will admit, I've only read the book once, and it was...
Just once.
It was quite a while ago, so I need to reread it. But
the version I had a cartoon on every other page, so...
Yeah, no, I read the brick version. I did read the full thing. But I am most familiar with, there's a 1990s version of a film that people are very familiar with. It had Christian Bale when he was not Batman yet, so I kind of love it for that. There's that version. There's obviously the new film. There was also a BBC, PBS masterpiece.
Because there always is a couple of those.
There always is. Yeah, there are a few. But there was a new one just a couple years ago that I was also really fond of. And I love the Broadway musical. I got to see a production of it at Bob Jones University, where I went to school, they did a student-led produced version of the musical that was really fun and good. So I'm looking forward to seeing it again and seeing what Western does with it.
I think most people, if they're coming into it, have certainly at least seen the commercials for the movie version that just came out.
Right.
What did you think of the cast, of the way that they tweak the stories here and there?
Yeah, it's funny with the movie coming out. When I first saw the trailer for it, I was like, they're doing another Little Women? I was like, we have a lot of Little Women already. Like, they just made the new series. Like, why are they making another one? And just from the trailer, I felt like it was going to be more of the same and more of what had already been done. And I was like, of course I'll see it. It's Little Women. I mean, like, there was no question of whether or not I was going to see it. But I really didn't expect to be that impressed by it. I really thought it would just kind of be more of the same thing. So when I went to see it, I was really pleasantly surprised by how much I did love it and how much I thought it was a very unique, like, different spin on the story, and it did bring new things to it that other versions hadn't. And I think it was more faithful to the book and to the author's life, and it brought in, a lot of new things that just had been kind of overlooked before. So
some of the biographical elements?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the big debates, and, like, I'm sorry for spoilers, but I'll try to keep it vague, but one of the big debates is over who Jo ends up with romantically, and the fact that in real life, Louisa May Alcott stayed single. She wrote this book based on her own experiences, but then she never got married. And so there's been a lot of discussion over the new film and how it handles the ending of the story and just, like, the setup for the romantic relationships and where it leaves Jo at the end of the story, which I think the way the film was made honestly leaves it a little open to interpretation. Yeah. So people have come away with different ideas of how it ended.
There's not a ring on it.
But I think that was really a bold thing to do because it is a story that everyone's so attached to, and if you mess with it, they're going to get mad. So I think
why would fans get upset about their fandom? When does that ever happen?
That never happens. No, they're not possessive at all.
A moment of silence, please.
But no, but I think that people do obviously, get upset if there are changes. But what I liked about the film was that it didn't change it as drastically as I was expecting it to. Once I heard people debating, like, whether or not they changed the ending. It wasn't as drastic as I expected. It was a little more open to interpretation, but I thought it still conveyed the right concept and meaning, that for Jo it wasn't just about who she ended up with romantically. And they brought that into the story with Jo trying to write stories and write about her life, and her editor's just like, but is she married? Does she get married by the end? Who is she with?
Editors can be horrible people.
Sometimes. Some editors. But they kind of brought in that concept that we have so many expectations for stories and for women, and that, like, she got to be with a man by the end of it. And I really liked how they actually, like, addressed that. But
one of the things I find about the characters that, like I said, I'm certainly not as familiar with this as you, is that each of the characters, especially the four sisters, they're all looking for the happy ending that best fits them, not the one that society would pick for them, or what other expectations, but whatever's supposed to be the one that I want the ending that fits my story.
Right. And it's not always what they expect or what they originally thought it was, or, one of my favorite lines in the new film comes from Meg, the oldest sister, talking to Jo. And Meg is getting married, and Jo is mad about it because Jo is at that
as
point,
as younger sisters can be sometimes when
and
that
at
happens.
that point especially, Jo is just not into the idea of any of them getting married. She wants them all to stay together like they always have been, and so she's really upset and really struggling with the fact that Meg is getting married, and she's like, but you could do so many things with your life. You could be an actress, you could do whatever. And Meg tells her, she says something along the lines of, just because my dreams aren't the same as yours doesn't mean they're not important.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big messages of the story and of the sisters just in their own journeys and coming to the different points that they come to and where they see where their journeys take them and what they want out of their lives. And yeah, which may be different than what people who love them in their own families are telling them, and then very different from what society or expectations are telling them. But I think that that's just handled really well and very realistically in just kind of their struggle to figure out who they are and what they want.
And support for one another.
Exactly, and learning to support each other.
And some of them taking longer than others.
Yes, for sure. Learning how to get along and work together and support each other's dreams. Definitely.
Were there any other moments? I mean, we've already gotten into spoiler territory. Were there any other moments or special scenes or lessons that you liked, or just even bits that just tinged your heart?
Right. I mean, I cry every time I watch any version of Little Women. Again, not to give away one of the biggest spoilers, but there's a very emotional thing that happens, and it makes me cry every single time. But one of the things about the film, especially that was new, that I loved about the way they did it, was they kind of jump back and forth in time periods.
Yes, there are some people that's confused some people.
Could be confusing.
I don't understand why they had.
Yeah, I think that they set it up well enough to be able to distinguish.
But that is one of the current critiques.
And I think especially if you're not familiar with the story, it would be possibly hard to follow. Yeah. But I think that they set it up well, and what they gained from that was just this, the ways they were able to parallel the different events in these girls' lives and how they fit together, and it just made the moments more powerful, I think.
And also how, in this situation, they responded this way, but in this next one, they went a different path. Right,
to show their growth and to show the things that changed over the course of their lives. And I think it was just really good at feeling very realistic, very down to earth, just like their conversations and the way they argue and talk over each other just felt like a real family.
Feel sorry for the subtitlist on this one.
Yeah, it'd be really hard. You have 4 separate lines of dialogue going. But I think it added a lot to just that feeling of them being real people that you can relate to and understand. And
now the cast is good in addition to the 4 sisters. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a weak link on them. Love Laura Dern as the mother.
Yes, she was absolutely incredible and so good in that role, which is another cherished, these girls just love their mother so much. So this image of Marmee, they call her, is
because it's the 18th
because it's the Civil War, so they call her Marmee.
Yep.
But she is just this character that's kind of set on a pedestal in their minds and in the fans' minds. But Laura Dern was amazing in bringing that to life, but again in a very down to earth, realistic, relatable way. It's incredible.
Anybody else on the cast especially stand out for you?
I
mean, a lot of people were nominated for Oscars for this.
Yeah, a lot of awards, a lot of people.
I hope they get the costume design. I think that's their best bet.
Yeah, this gorgeous costumes, amazing setting. Just the whole film was so well done. I loved Timothée Chalamet as Laurie.
Sure, I never know how to pronounce his name.
I'm hoping I said that right, and I'm
Sounded
sorry
right.
if I didn't. But he was great, very realistic and dynamic, showed a lot of different sides to Laurie and some of his faults that I think aren't always seen.
That's one of the other things about the contrasting the present with the past with the later events is that he makes some mistakes and he hurts some people along the way.
Definitely, and seeing his character development and just all of the characters being a little more complex, I think, and realistic. And then the girl who played Amy, I think it's Florence Pugh. Again, I don't want to mispronounce.
We'll learn her name when she comes out, when the Black Widow movie comes out.
she was incredible, because one of the things about Little Women is, like, everybody hates Amy. Everybody always has hated Amy because she's very hard to like. And
the little sister always makes it harder on everybody else.
Yeah.
And I say that knowing you're...
Knowing I'm the youngest of my family.
And if my own sister ever sees this, we've had this conversation.
I'm nothing like Amy. But, no, she is. She's the little sister. She's very annoying and bratty and just has just a weird personality that I've never understood. But
in addition, that a lot of things come more easier for her just because of that.
Right. And I don't know, I've just never understood or liked her character at all in any version. But that's what was amazing about this version, was it was the first time that I actually felt like I understood and sympathized with and liked Amy. I think that
they give her some good speeches.
They give her some amazing speeches. They give her more time. They spend more time on developing her character and just making it make sense, showing the development in her from the bratty little child, but kind of explaining why she is that way. But then showing how she matures, how she grows up. And
she makes her own sacrifices, too.
Absolutely. And just her mind frame, again, just what the sisters want, what they're struggling with, is very different than her other sisters. But you can understand where she's coming from and why she's making the choices she does. And I think it made her much more understandable and much more sympathetic.
And anybody who gets to spend the afternoon with Meryl Streep, too, is also...
I mean, wow.
I think I loved her every scene she was in.
Oh, she was fabulous, as always. She was great. Awesome addition to the cast, for sure. But, yeah, I thought it was incredible, just a well-made film. And then, I liked that it did bring in a lot of the questions and even spend more time on the questions of, like, women's roles and what they were or weren't allowed to do in that society, what the expectations were for them. And Jo just being that kind of ahead of her time character, but then also still being so relatable. And she has this beautiful speech about how she's so sick of people just thinking that women are only good for getting married.
Yep.
But then she's also lonely, and she also struggles with her own feelings and how, she questions decisions that she's made and if she's doing the right thing, just that, like, so relatable.
There's that one scene right after Amy gets back from Europe where she makes eye contact with her mother, where a decision, she was... Without trying to get... we're still on the edge of spoilers, but she decided to make a big change that wasn't necessarily what she wanted and didn't realize that the option had been removed before she realized it. And coming to grips with that is... That's still one of the ones that sticks with me.
It's painful. And again, the acting just in, like, them exchanging a look, and there's so much meaning in it. But, just her character and her struggles and her trying to find her place and trying to pursue her dreams, but then... feeling limited by the culture and the time that she's in, but then struggling with her own personal desires. And, it was really relatable and really just beautifully presented, I think.
Like I said, it may be set so long ago, but we're still dealing with some of those issues.
Exactly, which is incredible, is to see the stories from back then and see both how far we've come and how much we're still fighting the same exact battles in so many ways.
Sorry about that. We're working on it.
But we're trying, and
stories like this give us hope and inspiration.
Absolutely, and they help start conversations about what's changed and what hasn't, and where we're at, and how we can keep fighting these battles. And I think characters like Jo are really inspirational for a lot of girls, which is why this story has kind of been relegated to, like, oh, that's one of those stories for girls, which I think is such a crime, because I think it's really just a story about humanity and it's for everybody. But I know that it is very inspirational to a lot of girls and women who see characters like Jo, who are pursuing their dreams and fighting against the adversities and being really realistic and relatable while they're doing it.
Look for the happy ending that best fits you.
Yes. Yeah. And keep fighting for what you believe in and what you want, and keep supporting other people to do the same. But it is incredible, and the musical is an incredible version of it too. I am really excited to see what Western does. They've done some amazing productions.
Yes, they certainly have.
Especially My Fair Lady was mind-blowing, just how big that production was and how well they did with it. So I'm really excited to see them put on another really big Broadway musical and see where it goes. And we'll definitely be covering that and giving you more information as it gets closer. But definitely go see it.
Because we want to go backstage.
Yes. But I think the musical brings another element that other adaptations can bring, because it's just different having a film versus a musical.
Yep.
And I think the music's incredible. It's super fun. It's just lively and upbeat and catchy, but like also just dives into these characters' minds a little bit more. You get kind of that internal monologue of what they're thinking and feeling.
Well, that is the bit of the musical. I am going to say out loud what I'm thinking, even if I never ever do that.
Exactly, which is so fun. It's such a different form, but it gives you those characters' thoughts and their relationships. And I just think it's a really fun take on the story. Obviously, it has to be a little more condensed also, because it's, time-wise has to be shorter, but I think that just gets to the heart of the characters and what they're feeling and experiencing, and really focuses on them and their relationships. And it'll probably make you cry too, but it's good.
Nothing wrong with a little crying.
No, it's great. But I think it's going to be a really good one. I'm really excited to see what they do with it.
So look for Little Women in all its forms.
Definitely read the book, watch the movies, the miniseries, everything. I think every version has its own merits. I mean, there are some I haven't seen that might be terrible, but
the ones you've seen,
as far as I'm aware, every version brings something new to the story a little bit, and it's just a story that's worth being told over and over.
To Little Women and Little Men.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you've been listening to Caleb Michael Smith
and Hannah Romero. Thanks for listening. We'll talk at you again soon.